Welcome back, my friends. Welcome back to Corbett Report Radio. I am, of course, your host, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, and I am coming to you, as always, from my palatial home recording studios in the sunny climes of Western Japan. And boy, do we have an action-packed, power-packed transmission lined up for you this evening. So don't touch that dial. We have not one, but two guests lined up for you tonight. And in the latter half of tonight's broadcast, we're going to be talking with an Australian living here in Japan, talking about the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear crisis here, and why neither himself nor myself have yet fled the country, which is something that I know a lot of you out there are interested in, and I've received a lot of emails and phone calls and questions about that over the last several months. So I'm looking forward to hashing out that topic in some greater detail and going over some of the worries and things that we think might have been overblown about the Fukushima story. And, of course, you'll know that I'm keeping a daily update on Fukushima at fukushimaupdate.com. So stay tuned for more of that. But right off the top tonight, we're going to be bringing on a special guest, Ted Walter. And I'm sure that many of you in the audience are probably already familiar with Ted's work. Especially, of course, he was an executive director of the NYC CAN initiative back in 2009, which was a ballot initiative in New York City to try to establish a local commission to conduct an impartial reinvestigation of the events of 9/11. And it was successful in signing up 80,000 New Yorkers onto their petition, but unfortunately, they did not get past the state Supreme Court. So, unfortunately, that ballot initiative did not result in a new independent investigation. But he is also now associated with the Remember Building 7 campaign at rememberbuilding7.org. And I'm sure my listeners, again, are familiar with Building 7, i.e. WTC7, the third skyscraper to fall on 9/11, a 47-story skyscraper that imploded into its own footprint at, free-fall acceleration for 2 seconds of its roughly 7-second descent on the afternoon of 9/11/2001. And, of course, people can read more about Building 7 if they haven't heard of it before at rememberbuilding7.org. And tonight we're going to be talking about an offshoot of that campaign, Occupy Building 7, which can be found at occupybuilding7.org. That's the number 7, occupybuilding7.org, where you can find out about this attempt to rally people in support of the cause of reestablishing an investigation into WTC7 and demanding action on that front. So, again, an absolutely fascinating conversation lined up for tonight, and I believe we have Ted on the line already. Ted, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it is great to finally talk with you and to talk with you about this extremely important subject, but we only have a minute or two before the first break. So just in this first minute or two, perhaps you can introduce yourself and the work that you've done on this issue in the past.
Sure. Well, you gave me a great, pretty comprehensive introduction. So I started working on the 9/11 ballot initiative in New York City in 2008 and through on to 2009. And as you said, we collected 80,000 signatures. And unfortunately didn't get on the ballot because the city of New York rejected our petition. And since then, NYC CAN has been working on, we've shifted our focus to Building 7 and raising awareness of that because we feel like that's going to be the gateway for the American public to, really learn the truth about 9/11. And a lot has happened in the last year, and we're continuing at it. And what we have coming up this weekend, as you said, is Occupy Building 7. That will be the start of what will hopefully become a long-term sustained action that will bring serious public attention to the destruction of Building 7.
I certainly hope it will do that, because I think, as anyone who's taken a look at Building 7 will know, Building 7 is very much the Achilles heel for the official conspiracy theory of 9/11, and there's a lot to be said about that. So I'm very much looking forward to tonight's conversation, again, talking with Ted Walter of occupybuilding7.org. Let's take our first break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
You just do as you're told.
All right, welcome back to tonight's broadcast, friends. James Corbett here from CorbettReport.com, and you are tuned into Corbett Report Radio right here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. And tonight we are talking to Ted Walter of OccupyBuilding7.org, the latest offshoot of the Remember Building 7 campaign, which itself was an offshoot of the NYC Can campaign, and Occupy Building 7 seeking to rally people on November 19th and 20th around the currently rebuilt World Trade Center Building 7 to try to raise awareness of the major Achilles heel in the official 9/11 story. So, Ted Walter, it's great to have you on the program tonight, and let's start getting into the story of how NYC Can came to become Remember Building 7 and started concentrating on that issue specifically.
Wow, that's a lot of history. Well, let me think. So I got involved personally with the New York City 9/11 ballot initiative in 2008. And during the summer of 2008, we succeeded in collecting about 30,000 signatures, which was part way to what we needed to collect in order to put the referendum on the ballot for a new investigation to happen in New York City. And by the time we got to the end of the summer in September 2008, we realized that we were going to continue going through the next year. And in order to get to that 75,000, 80,000 range that we needed in terms of signatures. And so we decided to revamp things a little bit. And one of the most important changes that we, I wouldn't call it a change, but, evolutions in our campaign was bringing on board several 9/11 victims' family members who had been involved in the 9/11 truth movement and really getting them to be sort of the leaders of our campaign, because we knew that it was sort of their moral legitimacy that had, for many of us, made us feel comfortable looking at this issue and felt like it was morally right to do so, aside from many other reasons. But they were real leaders, and so we decided to really bring them on board and work with them. And so that's where we went in 2009, and we started, we renamed it the New York City Coalition for Accountability Now. NYC Can had a number of 9/11 family members on our executive board, and we got through the summer of 2009, having collected the additional 50,000 signatures to get us on the ballot. And then a month after we filed our petition, the city responded, said that our petition was not legally valid, on grounds of technicalities. And so we went to court, and we ended up losing in court, and which was not uncommon I think there have been about 7 ballot initiatives attempted in New York City in the past 25 years before ours, and every single one went through the same process of going to court and losing in court. So the odds were sort of stacked against us once we got to that stage. So in the aftermath of that, we were regrouped, and we started sort of reaching out to city council members in New York, and we realized in talking to them and looking at things ourselves that Building 7 really was, as you've called it several times, the Achilles heel of 9/11. And I think we all know why, because the building came straight down in 6.5 seconds, symmetrically into its footprint. And so we started focusing on that, and so we started really intensively lobbying the city council to look at it. We had a phone fax campaign where we got hundreds of people every single day to call city council members in New York, and 3 council members per day until we got through all 51 of them. And that eventually evolved. We got to a point where we reached out. We actually had meetings with a quarter of the city council, and we said, this is a good start, but in order to really, a lot of these people want to do the right thing and actually have an investigation into Building 7, but really to get it to happen, we had to have pressure. We had to raise awareness within New York City and, of course, beyond. And so we said, okay, let's see what happens if we try to raise money to put ads on TV. And that was the beginning of, the Building What campaign at the time is what it was called. And that name hailed from the previous year when we were in court representing our ballot initiative. The judge, when our lawyer mentioned Building 7, the judge said, Building What? Having not heard of that building or knowing what it was called. And so that was what we called the campaign at first. And we did end up succeeding in raising $100,000 last September. We had some ads on the air for several weeks. Geraldo Rivera saw the ad and invited us on his show. He was very impressed, particularly with the number of architects and engineers at that time who had signed on to the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth petition. At the time, I believe it was about 1,300. And so things sort of grew from there. And since then, we've had another campaign in the spring where we raised almost $100,000 with the same number of ads on the air. We didn't get as much success with the media coverage, unfortunately. And that's sort of what brought us to decide that we should try to raise a much bigger sum of money. And that's actually what we're in the course of doing right now with Remember Building 7. If you go to that website, you'll see that we're trying to raise $1 million, which is really the amount where if we got there, you would see pretty much New York City just blanketed in ads for several weeks. And it would really immediately cause people to talk about Building 7 in the media all over New York, et cetera. So that's why our goal is $1 million. But in the meantime, while we're there, we've raised about $80,000 for that so far. We're also, last couple of weeks, last month, started thinking about Occupy Building 7 because of the Occupy Wall Street movement, which, to a large extent, we've been inspired by. And this event is an autonomous event, not connected to them. I should be very clear about the fact that at this point in time, there's been no official endorsement of our action that we're having this weekend, Occupy Building 7 on November 19th and 20th. But we are in discussion with people at Occupy Wall Street, going to a meeting tomorrow to see if they will give some level of endorsement to our action. And we've been down there flyering a lot, telling people that the action is happening this weekend. And the response has been very positive. I would say a majority of the occupiers down there know that 9/11 is a real issue and are definitely behind it. And many of them are looking forward to participating in the action this weekend. So.
Well, excellent. That's an excellent summary. And I think one thing that I hope listeners picked up on there is the fact that Remember Building 7 and now Occupy Building 7 has done the excellent job of really countering those old media canards that it's a disrespect to the victims' family members to talk about these types of issues, or that there's no intellectual legitimacy to these things by including the victims' family members and featuring them prominently in the advertisements, and also, of course, having a relationship with architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth and all of the thousands of accredited architects and engineers who have signed on to that campaign. So it is absolutely excellent to see that counteraction going on. So perhaps you could talk about some of the people who are involved with this movement.
Sure. Well, I think for me, personally, who I look to as kind of my moral leader in this movement is Bob McIlvaine, who I think many of you out there are familiar with. He's the former teacher from just outside Philadelphia who lost his son on 9/11. Bobby McIlvaine, and he's been an outspoken advocate for many years. And when I first started working with him, just being in his presence is quite unique. Compared, he's a very kind person, extremely knowledgeable, and so he's been one of our really one of our leaders. He has appeared in every single one, all three of the TV ads that we have produced. The third one right now, if you go to RememberBuilding7.org, you can watch that TV ad. The last TV ad is rather interesting. It features each ad has featured a different collection of people. The first one was for 9/11 family members. The second one was a lot of people. It was 4 family members plus 4 architects and engineers, 2 architects, 2 engineers.